In Kenya, electricity prices will increase by up to 78% from April if the energy sector regulator approves new tariffs from the Kenya Power and Lighting Company. If given the nod, the new prices are likely to derail Kenya's quest to make energy costs competitive compared to other African nations like Ethiopia and Egypt. On how it will likely impact the manufacturing sector, we spoke to Rajan Shah, the chairman of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers.
In terms of the manufacturing sector, if we look at how the entire sector in Kenya has been trending from 2013 over the last decade, we've actually seen it drop as a percentage of GDP. In 2013, we were at 12.8% of GDP, and now we are sitting at 7.2%. So whilst the absolute number has been growing, it has not been growing at a similar pace as what other sectors of the economy have been growing. And this has been a major concern. But the latest conversations we have been having with government and being challenged is to see how we can grow manufacturing as a percentage of GDP from 7.2% to 20% by 2030, which then means over the next 8 years, we have to grow the manufacturing as 1.6% of GDP. To your question about how the manufacturing sector has been faring, if we look at the last 3 years, we had COVID. During COVID, it also gave an opportunity to manufacturers to kind of re-engineer and remodel themselves. Many manufacturers in many particular industries like the textile started retooling themselves to manufacture some of the products which were urgently required during COVID time, especially the protective clothing and masks. So there was opportunities which had been created out of that. Subsequent to COVID, we have also seen how the Russian and Ukraine crisis has led to fuel and food price inflation. This has been putting a challenge to manufacturers because raw material prices have been going up. Supply chain has been constrained with higher freight costs, higher raw material costs. And as a result of that, your final product input cost has been also going up, which then, of course, means that our consumers do not have the ability to absorb those higher costs as well. So demand gets a little bit subsided because of that. So these are some of the challenges that our manufacturers have been going through. But despite all those challenges, I think there are great opportunities. And I think we see those opportunities. And that's why we're up to the challenge of seeing how to grow a manufacturing as a percentage of GDP to 20%.
Yeah, we saw so much news has been coming in from Kenya, especially the manufacturing space that we saw recently, the tough between the manufacturers as well as the government of Kenya on the edible oils shipments. And we do believe that that has been, as of now, resolved. If you could just give us an overview of what happened.
Right. Okay. So let's first of all address the main issue. What the government is trying to address is the cost of living. And like I mentioned earlier, that cost of many of the raw materials have been going up, including crude palm oil as well. During the last 2 years, it had actually gone up very high, and it's now, of course, coming down as well. The edible oil industry in Kenya is extremely established industry. We have 13 players in that industry, which actually produce or convert or refine nearly 700,000 metric tons per year of crude oil into edible oil. But over and above, they also make many other products from the byproducts, including soaps and also in the baking industry. So when this is a conversation where we have seen that the government has the intention to bring in refined edible oil already packaged, which then, of course, means that our local manufacturers will then have to have a reduced capacity utilization of their plants. Already, as we speak, the industry is only utilizing 60% of its capacity. And this is where we are now conversing with the government to say, can we still achieve the noble objective which the government has of reducing the cost of living? But at the same time, how can we still use the same capacities to produce locally and be able to achieve that? So it's still an ongoing conversation, which has not yet been completely resolved. But I believe that we will find a solution which will be a win-win between both industry and government to be able to achieve, and at the same time retain the jobs. We have nearly 40,000 jobs if you look across the entire value chain. 10,000 jobs in the edible oil industry, the soap industry, another 20,000 jobs. Other industries like the logistics industry, all of this could be impacted if those capacities are significantly curtailed because of ready products being brought from outside. So we are engaging with government to find a solution around how we can actually ensure that those capacities do not get eroded, do get used, and at the same time kind of retain those jobs in the industries and still achieve the overall objective of how we can bring the cost of living and cost of goods down.
Yeah, I mean, just still looking at the different activities that are happening within the economy that could also impact the manufacturing sector. You're looking at how to maintain those 40,000 jobs, as well as even create more, just looking at the targets for the manufacturing sector for this year. We've seen Kenya Power also has a proposal to hike power tariffs, and this is definitely going to have a big impact on the manufacturing sector. How will that affect the position within the market?
Yes, so again, as Kenya Association of Manufacturers, one of our major input costs or power factor of production is actually power. But of course, it varies from industries to industries. For some industries, it may be as low as 2% of the total cost of production. But for many power-intensive consumers like the steel industry, the cement industry, the edible oil industry, it can be as high as even going up to 40%. So what we have been continuously advocating for is that let's benchmark ourselves with our key competing export countries. Egypt is one of the exporting countries which competes with us on exports in the region. We also have, of course, our neighboring countries, Ethiopia, also Uganda, Tanzania. And how can we benchmark ourselves? And to that point, Fiona, we as KAM, one of our biggest, out of our 4 pillars, one of the foundational pillars is that we need to create global competitiveness. If our industries are globally competitive, then we achieve 2 things. We ensure that we are being we do not need to be protected against imported products because our manufacturers will be competitive, and we will be able to export our products into the region, into the areas where the markets have been created, excess of markets have been created, where the government is playing a wonderful job, and we grow more by exports. So electricity is just one of the components towards ensuring that we have a global competitiveness. Whilst we had these conversations in the past few years of how we can bring down the cost of power from 16 US cents to 10 US cents, there was a short period where we had some reprieve of getting 15% discount on tariffs. The current conversation is about going even higher than where we are. As a starting point, I think for manufacturers, which take up 55% of what is the total power produced in the country, it becomes very significant. And let's find, and this is where we are again engaging with government, before we start thinking about increasing, can we stabilize and at least be where we are? We cannot afford to go higher because that is going to erode our competitiveness and especially our global competitiveness. So again, these are very current conversations going on, but yes, to the manufacturing sector, this has a major impact.